Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited for today's video. I have a palette today for 30 days, and this is kind of going to be a summer edition grouping. So basically a lot of the looks that I've saved that I really enjoyed that I did over the summer. I have 30 looks with 30 different palettes to share with you today. I know that I definitely don't necessarily, like, we got more of like a spooky season vibe going on today, so not necessarily a summer look today, but I do have some really fun looks that I created this summer that I'm very excited to share with you. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. As mentioned in the introduction, this is really going to be looks that I created over the last 3 months. So really June, July, and August. So my summer looks, and I have 30 different palettes, 30 different looks to share with you. I will do a split screen and share pictures with you guys as we kind of go along, and I'll do my best to kind of share which shades in the palette I use, but I don't necessarily like take notes on like what specific shades I'm using. I literally just take pictures of the look. So in no particular order other than the way that everything is saved on my phone. The first look that I have to share comes from my What's Up Beauty Dragon Eye palette, and looking at this palette, I really do kind of think of fall right off the bat. And I think it really comes down to the shade Scales as well as the shade Monster. I feel like those are giving kind of like grungy fall vibes. And it could be that this palette kind of released like late in 2023, like later in the year. So kind of in the past, I have related this to more like fall, but I believe I actually rolled this into a No Pan Left Behind, which is why I ended up reaching for it in the summer. Not that you have to wear your makeup seasonally, but for the look that I created that you're seeing on the screen, hopefully, I really just focused on these 4 shades right here. And I actually really love the way that this look turned out. I do really kind of like the like pinky purple mixed with the like gold with like this flash of green. I don't know, I really like the way that this look turned out. Plus it was really easy to create, so really enjoyed that one. I love the What's Up Beauty formula. I feel like What's Up Beauty is like one of the most underrated indie eyeshadow brands. They have such an incredible formula, and I really love their special shades. I will note the ones in the Dragon Eye palette are a little bit flakier, but they're definitely very impactful on the eyes, and I've really enjoyed using that. All right, next one. This is definitely giving summer to me, and this look I created with the Mighty Monster palette in collaboration with Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner. This is the Oden's Eye palette that she did in collaboration with them. And for this look, I used these 2 matte shades right here, and then I used this shade right here, the shade Midgard Dream, which I was really excited for this shade. And I will say, overall, I was not super impressed with this look, and overall I wasn't really impressed with the quality in this Oden's Eye collection as a whole. I just felt like specifically the mattes were just extremely hard to work with. I found that they were hard to blend. I did find that I didn't think that this red shade was all that pigmented, and then I was really having to kind of dip back and forth and then dip back and forth, and I didn't feel like I had an easy time blending. I just do not love the way that this look turned out, but nevertheless I wanted to share it because it was definitely one of the more like bright, like reddy orange shades that I created, and I feel like it kind of is giving that summer feel. I do really like the shade Midnight Gleam. I think this is a really beautiful kind of golden orange, yellowy sort of special shade. I think it's beautiful on the eyes, but the mattes in this palette, as I said, I was not impressed with. All right, and then speaking of that Oden's Eye collection, the next look that I have to share with you is from the Earthwood palette, which was in collaboration with Fancy Face, and I definitely like this look a lot more, but I did something very neutral with this one, which is kind of a go-to both in the summer and all year round. So I kind of wanted to share a mixture of both, but for this, I used the shade Earth, the shade Wood, and then I also used the shade Strength all over the lid. For the inner corner, I believe I used just my Vesca Beauty highlight, but it was just those 3 shades that I used to create this look. I do really like the way that this look came together, but it's just a basic everyday neutral. So yeah. All right, the next look, I ended up loving this palette. I actually almost ended up decluttering this one from Aether Beauty. It's the Summer Solstice palette. And then I pulled it out and I was like, you know what, I'm actually going to give this a chance rather than just decluttering it. And I'm so glad that I did, because not that this is like an earth-shattering color story, but I find that these mattes are so easy to work with. And for just everyday looks, I really enjoyed this palette. So for the look that you're seeing right now, I went in with these 2 matte shades up top to kind of build up the crease, as well was I used this shade to blend everything out, and then I used this really, really beautiful bronzy shade on the bottom, and then I used the gold on like the inner half of my eye. And as I said, I really do love the way that this look turned out. I feel like oftentimes I steer away from golds just because I don't always love them on the lid. There was something about this warm neutral look that I just really, really enjoyed, and I feel like it was the perfect look. And I feel like it was a perfect look for summer, so very pleased with that. Okay, one of my favorite looks of the entire summer, I used the same palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today to create, but very different vibes. So I have the Basic Witch palette from Bella Beaute Bar. No, I knew this was gonna happen. I could sense it. Okay, I need to repress the shade right now again. But anyway, the look that you are seeing off to the side, very, very simple. I believe I ended up using, I can't remember what shade, just a very neutral brown shade out of, I think it was the Tartelette in Bloom. Either that or I just used my bronzer for the crease. And then I used the shade Incantation all over the lids. I absolutely love this shade for just this beautiful like orangey, iridescent golden sort of shade. I think it's so pretty. And then I ended up just using my Fenty Fly Liner in Big Truffle to create a wing. And that is the look that you're seeing on the screen today. Like I said, this is one of my favorite looks that I created the entire summer. I ended up recreating this look, which I don't oftentimes waste my time recreating a look just because I feel like doing my eyeshadow is such like a creative thing every day. Like I enjoy creating new looks every day, so I don't often repeat the same look from the same palette, but I love this so much that I ended up repeating the look. So you know it was fake then. Okay, this next one is maybe something a little bit different for the summer. And again, I hate to say that like all of these looks are like summer specific looks. These are literally just looks that I did in the summer. So maybe I'm gonna stop like mentioning even summer as a thing. But for this look, I used the Kaja. Okay, I didn't grab the Kaja stack. I wanted to highlight this palette, but I did use the Kaja stack, I believe in Cold Brew, to build the crease up. And then on the and then all over the lid, I took this shade right here out of the Moth and Moon palette. I don't know if these have shade names or not, but this is this really, really beautiful iridescent green teal sort of shade. I think it is so, so pretty. I loved this look so much. I will say I don't absolutely adore the like matte shadows from the Diveroon palettes, but their special shades are just so interesting and so unique. I'm looking at this and I'm like, I feel like I probably used a shade out of the Cold Brew palette on like the inner corner of my eye. I'm not sure what is on the actual inner corner, but I do know it was this shade right here on like the center of my lid. I believe I put a little bit of this shade mixed with those Cold Brew shades on the like outer third of my lid, which is why you're seeing a little bit of like a tealy green. It's such a pretty shadow though. This is like really the shadow I wanted to highlight. But this is look number 6. All right, the next look that I have to share is using the Dominique Cosmetics Latte palette, which I did ultimately decide I was going to declutter, but I still wanted to share this look in case this is a palette that you own. Perhaps it could give you some inspiration. I try to use as many shades as possible when creating this look, but just use neutral matte browns to create that, to build up the outer crease. And then I think I used 2 of the metallic shades all over the lid. The inner corner is, ooh, it is, I believe it might be Atlas. It's either Polaris or Atlas. Oh, or it might be, no, it's not Don't Be Shellfish. I believe it's Polaris from the Danessa Myricks Groundworks palette. All right, it would not be summer if I did not create a look using the NARS Summer Solstice palette. This was my first experience with NARS eyeshadows and definitely one of my favorite palettes. So to create this look, I used these 2 mattes to build up the crease. Then I went in with just the tiniest amount of this bronze shade on the outer like third of my lids. I went in with this shade right here all over the lids, and then I topped it using my favorite shade in the palette, which is this lid topper shade. And I really, really love the way that this look turned out. I do know I used the shade Don't Be Shellfish from Clarity So Amazing for the inner corner, but I really, really love the way that this look turned out. Just a really beautiful warm look that's not too impactful, like not too overpowering. And just something that like makes me always feel confident. All right, next up I have a very like green tealy look. And then for this, I used the Groovy Gardens palette to create this look. And so for this look, I really focused on these shades right here. I will say, as I like reflect back on some of these, I'm like, oh girl, you could have spent a little bit more time in the blending category. But I used these 2 shades right here to build up the crease. And then I used these 2 shades, Moonchild and Jazzed, all over the lid. So freaking beautiful. And then I used Don't Be Shellfish again in the inner corner. But I really like the way that this look turned out. Just looking at the lid and just looking at like how impactful and just special. The special shades are, you guys know I talk about how much I love Ensley Rain special shades all the time, so this look was no exception. All right, next up I have a look using mostly the Sigma Corderosa palette, but I also used, again, that shade out of the Oden's Eye Mighty Monster palette that I already mentioned. So the shade that you're seeing on my lid in this look is the shade Midgard Gleam, which is, again, just such a beautiful orange, sparkly, impactful kind of shade. For this look, I believe, and again, you guys, sometimes it's like hard to say, but I believe I used these two shades as well as this shade right here to kind of build up the crease. And then I know that I used a little bit of High Society all over the lids as well, but then I just wanted something a little bit sparkly, which is why I added that shade out of the Mighty Monster palette. And then actually the next look that I have to share is very similar, and again, using the Sigma Corderosa palette. The only difference with this look, I believe, is that I actually used the shade Sunsprite, which is this gold. And then I think I used a little bit of this, which I'm not sure that I used in the last look. Regardless, the entirety of the look you're seeing for this look is something that I created with the Sigma Corderosa palette. I love this palette. I don't love every Sigma palette, and actually I haven't tried any palette since. This may have been the most recent Sigma release that I've tried. They have some color stories that I'm definitely interested in, but I just haven't always been the most impressed with the formula. However, I really do enjoy this palette. I think it has great formula, and I really enjoy reaching for this palette in the summer. Okay, this next look was definitely different for me, but I had so much fun with this one, and I actually created this look when the Minnesota Timberwolves were in the basketball playoffs, like the NBA playoffs, and I loved this look because it was kind of Timberwolves-esque. And for this look, I used the Blend Bunny Surge palette, and so for this look, I used these green shades to kind of build up that outer third, and then I cut the crease, and I used these two shades to, like, I used those all over the lid. That's what you're seeing all over the lid. This was an all matte look, which is definitely very different for me. Very, very colorful. I literally never do a cut crease, but it kind of made me want to just dabble in trying different things with my eyeshadow, and I thought that this one actually was such a fun look. Okay, then I had to create one of my favorite looks to create every single summer, and that is just a pop of neon on the inner corner, and then I used my Fenty Fly Liner again to create a wing. So for this look, I used the shade Shocked out of this palette, this really, really beautiful vibrant yellow, and I love the way that this look turned out. Again, I probably use my bronzer in the crease, but this is a look that I create every single summer. I enjoy this look so much, so there it is. All right, the next look that you were seeing, I really enjoyed creating. This one was created using the Bella Beaute Bar Secret Garden eyeshadow palette, and I just used this entire top row to create the look that you're seeing, and then I added just a little bit of the shade Sun Shower, which is this really beautiful kind of icy pink, to the inner part of the lid. Just add a little bit of pink to it. This shade right here, the shade Zebo, is such a beautiful hollow shade. It is so pretty. For a neutral look, I just felt so glamorous in this look. I actually ended up wearing this to work and got a couple of compliments on it from patients, which, you know, it's a good day when you get compliments on your eyeshadow from your patient. All right, after that, you're seeing a look using the Oden's Eye Little Ghost eyeshadow palette, and for this, I used all of the shades on the bottom. I feel like this is such a fun look. I don't often reach for, aside from like cool tone pinks, I don't often reach for warm tone pinks. I'm not much of like a pink person on the lids, at least, but I feel like this is very fitting for the summer, kind of like those fiery like oranges and pinks that just, again, kind of feel just like perfect for the summer, and I really enjoy this palette for that. All right, next up I have a look that I used the Flower Moon palette to create, and I will say this is definitely not my favorite look that I've created with the Flower Moon palette, and for me, the mattes in this are not with any Ensley Rain palette. It's like the mattes are definitely not what's stealing the show, but specifically, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do really with these mattes. So mostly when I reach into this palette, I'm focused on just reaching into here for like 1 to 2 of their special shades. I actually already have 2 pans in this palette, but for the look that you're creating, I really wanted to like test the palette out, like test creating a look using just this palette out. So for that, I used the shade Lush and Rejuvenate, the orange, and then this shade Lush really is more of like a, it almost has like a green like a mossy kind of green undertone to it rather than being like a yellow leaning shade. Anyway, and then I used just a small amount of the shade Renew to build up the crease. And then all over the lid, I used Bliss, which is kind of one of those, I don't know if this is necessarily a holographic shade, but it's definitely one of those chunkier metallics that is just so impactful on the eyes. And then I used Awakening on kind of like the inner part of my eye to create the look that you are seeing here. I wish... Earlier this year, I don't know that I took a picture of it, but I created a look using like these first 2 or 3 special shades, these really beautiful like pink orangey shades. They're so pretty. I wish I had saved that one. Perhaps I'll have to recreate a look using those shades and share that with you guys in my next 30-day palette a day. All right, for another kind of like pinky orangey gold sort of look, the look that you're seeing now, I used the Ensley Cosmic Dreamer palette to create this look, and I actually had so much fun creating this look. I actually really enjoyed this look. It might be one of my favorites that I created this summer, especially just considering how I don't always love to wear pinks. Like, I really loved this one. So to create this look, I mostly used just these 6 shades right here, and I freaking love the way that this look turned out. There's just something so special, I feel like, about the shade Interplanetary, which is the shade that you're seeing on the inner part of the lid. Again, I don't always love like a gold or like an orange like this is not necessarily like my go-to reach, but I just felt like it really tied this look together, and I really enjoyed this one. All right, you guys, we know how much I love my Viseart Soleil Le Plug palette, so obviously I had to create a look using this one. The one thing I will note is I do believe I have 1 shade out of the Dive Rune Dewdrops palette on my eyes in this look, because Viseart definitely does not make something quite that punchy on the lids. So I do believe it was my Dive Rune Dewdrops palette. But to create this look, I used these 2 matte shades right here and here, and then I used this beautiful pale yellow metallic shade all over the lids, and then again I topped it with that Dive Rune palette just because I am someone who likes a little bit of extra on the lids. I like a little bit of va-va-voom, I like a little zhuzh, I like a little, not a little, I like a lot, like punchy in your face metallics. So I added a little something to this, but I always really enjoy reaching for this palette. It is definitely a favorite, especially for the summertime, so was happy to create a look to share with you guys today. All right, next up is a look that I ended up wearing to the Morgan Wallen concert, and for this, I ended up using some of the matte shades out of the Patrick Ta Major Dimension palette, but then I went in with the shade Satin Taupe all over the lid to create the look that you're seeing. I will say it's definitely like not my favorite look ever. I had a look in mind. I don't necessarily feel like I executed. I definitely feel like Satin Taupe used to be prettier than, at least than it appears in this look, and some of the other looks that I've created using this shade, but I'm still happy to have this MAC Encrypted Kryptonite palette, and I'll continue to play around with it. MAC Satin Taupe used to be my favorite shade of all time. It definitely is not anymore, but that's okay. All right, this next look that you are seeing, I used both the Alter Ego Canyon palette as well as my Danessa Myricks Groundworks Volume 3. You guys know I love my Danessa Myricks Groundwork Volume 3. And the shade all over the lid in this look is the shade Solarian right here, which is this really beautiful, again, kind of like orange gold champagne flip sort of shade. And then I just used some of the mattes in the Alter Ego Canyon palette to build up the crease, and I loved the way that this look turned out. I ended up wearing this one to work, and I'm pretty sure I got some compliments from patients as well on this one. I just feel like it's a really beautiful warm look. It just worked really well. It reminded me how much I actually do really like the Alter Ego Canyon palette. I think the formula is so good and the palette is beautiful. And then speaking of the Alter Ego Canyon palette, the next look that you're seeing is another look that I created using this palette. This is one that I worked on in my No Pan Left Behind project. So for this look, again, I just used some of the matte shades. I'm not exactly sure specifically which ones to build up the crease, but then I used the shade Blaze on the outer like half of my lid, Plateau a little bit in the center, and then I believe I went in with the shade Cougar on the inner like third of my lids to create the look that you are seeing right now. The third and final Oden's Eye palette out of the, I don't even remember what collection this was, but the Spring Dragon palette is the palette I used mostly to create the look that you're seeing now. I feel like this was the one that worked the least for me out of the three, but the look that you're seeing was really, really easy to create. I just went in with this shade all over the crease, and then I popped the shade Moss all over the lid. I wasn't loving the impact that Moss was giving. It just wasn't giving me enough. So I ended up then going into my Danessa Myricks palette and reaching for the shade Martian, which looks kind of like a blue in the pan, but all over the lid, it really kind of pulls this like tealy green color. And I really feel like that look, for just a simple, quick, easy look, worked really well for me. Again, I don't love the quality of this, but I did enjoy this look. All right, next up I have the one and only look that I have created this year using the Glamlight Cake palette. And for this, I really used the I used the shade Pineapple, Peach, and Dulce de Leche. And then I went in with Carrot and Banana on the lids to create the look that you're seeing. I do like this look. Oh, sorry. And then I wanted to like try and get use out of more shades. So I ended up using the shade Raspberry on the lower lash line. I do like the way that this look turned out. I will say, like, again, kind of perfect, like fiery orangey yellow shade for the summer, but just not something that's like an everyday for me. I don't know if my No Pan Left Behind will be up already. It probably is, but spoiler, I will likely be decluttering this palette because I'm just not reaching for it. All right, next up I have a look using my Natasha Denona Golden Eyeshadow Palette, and I was really happy with the way that this look turned out. Again, this is kind of just one of those like basic everyday looks, but I feel like that is what this palette is for, and I really like the way that the look turned out. So to create the look that you are seeing, I ended up using the shade Aria as well as the shade Log to build up the crease, and then I used the shade Various and the shade Nubia on the outer third and inner thirds of the lid to create this look. And then I believe in the inner corner I ended up going in with a little bit of Aurora. You guys know how much I love my Natasha Denona Gold palette, and using the golden palette has also just been a grand old time. I think this is a really beautiful one. I get there's not a ton of versatility to this, but again, for like an everyday palette, I think this is such a good one. So I was very happy to create a look with this one. All right, a look that I actually really ended up loving was one that I created using the Cosmic Brushes Neutrals palette. And I know that this is kind of just like a boring old look, but for this, I just used Neutral and Bare as mattes to build up the crease. And that is everything. I don't know, maybe I used Radiant as the inner corner, but I actually think I used my Vesca highlight for the inner corner with this look. But this, it was just fun to kind of do just like a basic matte look. It's just something that like I literally never do, and this palette was able to provide me the opportunity to create that type of look. All right, for the next look, I believe I used the ABH Jackie for my crease shades with this, but what I really wanted to highlight in this look was the Diver & Cosmetics Dewdrops palette, which I absolutely love. This is such a cute companion palette, and it is just, sometimes it's like, I like Diver for their special shades, so like I'd rather them just keep releasing these with special shades rather than their full palettes with the mattes, because it's so fun to have this as a cute little companion. So again, I believe I used the ABH Jackie palette for the crease shades, and then I used the shade Dip as well as Splash just on the, basically all over the lids. I layered Splash on top of Plop, which, did I say Drip? I meant Plop. I layered Splash on top of Plop to create the look you're seeing, and I think this is such a fun, beautiful pink look. Again, I keep saying I don't love pink, but I will say like this shimmery pink, like I really, really loved this look. This is probably one of my top looks from the summer, so huge fan of this little palette. All right, another look using the Ensley Rain Flower Moon palette, and for this one, I again wanted to focus on creating a full look with the palette, so I was using Meadow and Budding for the crease shades. Then I went in with Primrose all over the lid, and it was just those three shades, I believe, to create the look that you're seeing. Such a fun palette for greens, but again, like the mattes, I really could like leave the mattes and just have a full shimmer palette from Ensley Rain. That'd be perfect too. But I do enjoy this look just a little bit more than the other look that I created from the Flower Moon palette. Speaking of that Primrose shade, I also ended up using that topped on top of the look that I created with the Flower Moon, or sorry, with the ColourPop Limoncello palette, just because I was looking for a little bit of something extra. But for this look, I ended up going in with the shades this shade right here, this shade right here, and then this shade all over the lid. I will say I just feel like this one, because I have, you know, been dabbling so much more with indie shadows, this was just like a little bit lackluster on the eyes, which is why I added that Primrose shade out of the Flower Moon palette, just to add a little bit of something something. But I still really do love the ColourPop Limoncello palette, and if you're definitely on days that I'm looking for something more toned down, or if I want something more toned down, this is a great option to reach for. And I have another one out of the Diveroon Moth and Moon palette, and for this, I again really wanted to focus on getting like a full look out of this palette rather than just creating like a neutral look and digging into this for just one of the shimmery shades. So for this, I ended up using this matte shade right here, this matte shade right here, and then this beautiful, beautiful shade right here all over the lid. I think this is a fun one. I think you might be able to see in the pictures though, I really did struggle with specifically this matte. I do feel like Diveroon could work on their mattes just a little bit. They have nailed their special formula. Different textures, types, tones within their special formula, but their mattes, there's room to improve. And then the 30th and final look that I have to share comes from the newest palette that I have shared today in my collection. This is very new to my collection. Like, what am I saying? This is the Simply Posh Cosmetics Coastal palette, and this is my first time using a Simply Posh palette, so I'm very excited to try a new indie brand to me, and I am so pleased with the way that this look turned out. I'm so pleased with the Simply Posh formula as much as I've used it thus far. So to create this look, I ended up using the shade Tranquil up here, as well as Shoreline and a little bit of Coastal, and then I used the shade Sunbathe all over the lid, and I think that Sunbathe is so beautiful. Again, these indie brands and their special shades, they ruin it for all other brands though. But really enjoyed the look that I created with this, and I'm very excited to continue to play with this palette. After that, you guys, those are the 30 most recent, not really most recent, I've literally been compiling things for 3 months, but those are my 30 favorite documented looks from the summertime. I would love to know in the comments below, what is the palette that you have created your favorite? Whatever look has been your favorite this year that you've created, what palette did you use to create it? Or did you use multiple palettes? Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.